Hello everyone, what's up? In this video I'm taking a proper look at the new Kaleido ColorWorks Metallic paints by Gaahleri. 12 colors tested on spoons, plus 2 full Star Wars Legion units base coated, Aqua Droids and crop Droids. So if you've ever struggled with acrylic metallics, clogging, poor coverage, flaky finishes, or if you just want to know if these paints are worth trying, this video is for you. So here you have it, the Kaleido ColorWorks Metal Color Set. That's quite a mouthful, huh? This set includes 12 paints, plus thinner and cleaner, all in 20ml dropper bottles. Let's take a look at each of them. So as I said, cleaner, thinner, silver, flashy gold, stainless steel, champagne gold, scorched gold, titanium alloy, tungsten steel, copper, red copper, gunmetal, misspelled as you can see, aluminum, and zirconium black. Now this primer is not included in the set, but I wanted to test it alongside the paints as a really good acrylic black primer is not easy to come by, much less a glossy one. This will be tonight's first test, so get ready. As you can see, I went for my Mobius TG 0.5mm for this, using the regular nozzle, not the fan cap variant. I thinned the primer slightly, just eyeballing the mix, and I set the pressure to 22 psi. As a thinner, I went for the one in the metal set. After testing the paint on my left glove, as I usually do, I went for quick, overlapping passes with the airbrush, with the trigger depressed continuously, just as if I was using a lacquer primer instead. This was in fact the fourth of 14 spoons which I primed this way, and as you can see, the paint atomized beautifully, leading to a gradual buildup of opacity on the one hand, but also of gloss. Now I'm not going to bore you by showing you how I primed each and every spoon, but suffice it to say that by the time that I reached the very last one, I had not stopped to clean even the tip of the needle once. More importantly perhaps, the finish was absolutely beautiful, highly reflective and totally uniform. Now since I have painted a large 4000 point Custodes army, one of the main reasons that I picked up this set was to try Gaahlerie's gold paints. The fact that there were 3 different ones included was quite intriguing, so I was dying to check them out. The primed spoons for them, as you can see, were all looking beautiful and very consistent with each other. For the first paint in the test, Scorched Gold, I went with the Mobius TG once more, and with the same thinner as before, again eyeballing my mix. But when I went to try it out on my nitrile glove, you could see that there were issues, probably as a result of improper cleaning on my part. I persisted, however, and although I had to use more trigger pressure than I normally would, I was able to lay down some really nice coats of this gold paint without any major problems. There were a few spots though where my aggressive use of the trigger created some paint flooding, but as you can see here, the paint leveled quite well, proving more forgiving than I would have expected. For the next paint, Champagne Gold, I decided to simply switch airbrushes as I kept having problems with the Mobius, and I went with my Gaahleri Swallowtail with its smallest 0.28mm needle. I also decided not to thin the paint at all and just to see what happened. My reasoning was that this would allow me to really put the product through its paces. Acrylic metallic paints, due to the metallic flakes in them, do not respond well to this sort of treatment. In addition, I was also more careful in the trigger myself, which would increase dry tip naturally, and I tried to build up opacity with overlapping but continuous passes with the airbrush rather than with bursts, as most painters would do with acrylics. Again, this would also normally increase dry tip, and what happened really surprised me. Look at that, I was really enjoying myself at this stage. Not only was this spraying almost perfectly, despite the aforementioned challenges, but the finish was also beautiful. If you check out my video on what I consider the best gold paints, you will understand my surprise. This acrylic here was performing, I would say, dangerously close to my very favorite lacquer paint. This is the last gold paint in the set, Flashy Gold. Check out how gently I laid out this first coat and how fine the atomization is, guys. Not a sign of speckling or of any other flaws. After the initial layer was done, I took my time and built up the gold little by little. The end result, I'm sure you will agree, is really beautiful. Anyway, if you enjoyed that, here are the 3 gold paints side by side. The next paint I tested, I have to say, is clearly my favorite in this whole set, tungsten steel. As you can see, it airbrushed just as well as the golds, and this greenish, or maybe bluish, I'm not quite sure, finish is quite possibly one of the most beautiful steel tones that I've ever seen. You will be able to appreciate it better on the Star Wars Aqua droids later. Stainless steel came next. Same spraying characteristics as all the prior paints, which confirmed that these paints really need no thinning whatsoever, and that they all have really fine metallic flakes. This paint had a much more neutral finish, if that's your thing. After that came this paint called copper. To be honest with you, I think it's a misnomer. This looks exactly like brass to me, rather than copper. Accordingly, the finish looks really good, but not as vibrant as any of the golds. The next paint, named Red Copper, does more justice to its name. Here I made several mistakes with the airbrush, I have to say. But like with the first spoon, the paint leveled quite well, hiding the mistakes for the most part. Next comes Gunmetal, a color which, regardless of brand or type of paint, is crucial for any Warhammer painter. Most paints like this are rather bland, but this one has a trick up its sleeve. It's subtle, but it clearly has a warm, brownish tone. You will see what I mean more clearly, I think, on the Star Wars scrap droids later. The next color, Zirconium Black, is hard to describe. I don't think I would call it metallic black, but it is extremely dark, and it could be a great foundation for contrast effects, like stippling a bright metal on top of this with the airbrush. Next up, we have Titanium. This was a joy to airbrush from start to finish, so I decided to take it extra slow and see how far I could get it in terms of a highly reflective finish. Well, what do you think? Bright enough? And speaking of bright metals, here we have aluminum. Highly reflective and with a bluish tint to it. I would say this was also a winner. Now I was out of primed spoons, and all I had was this one, which I had stupidly used for testing the Mobius TG earlier when it was malfunctioning. I applied several coats carefully to make sure that the finish wasn't marred or altered by the paint residue. And thankfully I was able to obtain a very shiny, uniform finish. Okay, but enough about the spoons, right? Let me show you some real models. In the Clone Wars cartoons, Aqua droids, like the B2 Super Battle droids, have a plain metal finish. So as I said earlier, to give it some character, I decided to go with tungsten steel. Same airbrush as with the spoons, same pressure, and same dilution, that is to say, no dilution whatsoever. Now I like painting spoons just as much as the next guy, but this was really more fun. I wanted to show you guys that great transition from black to slightly metallized to highly reflective metal, which we all know and love with metallics. And I think these shots capture that really well. When I was done, I was really pleased with the results, and I knew that my son, who built these spindly guys with me, would be happy too. Look at that. The second, third, and fourth droids were also a pleasure to spray, and I'd like you to bear in mind a few things. First, as I said repeatedly before, no thinning. Secondly, I took no breaks from one droid to the next to clean the airbrush, not even the tip, because at no point did I get any dry tip whatsoever. And thirdly, notice how I sprayed the models. Continuously and with gentle pressure on the trigger, just as if this paint were a lacquer. Essentially, that's textbook torture test for any acrylic. After that, it was time for the little crab droids with the gunmetal paint. I have to say, whenever I record myself painting models other than vehicles, I'm always nervous that the footage will not be as good, that the camera will not be in focus, or whatever. Since you hold them in your hands, even with a handle, it's really hard to get good footage. when I checked this part of the video, I was very happy indeed to see that the opposite was true. I think it's one of my best clips in terms of showing my airbrush technique. And if you were ever wondering whether it was possible to get up close and personal with a trigger airbrush like this, I think now you know the answer to that. But I digress. When I was done, I was very happy with the smooth, realistic finish, and with that warm, somewhat brownish tint, which I referred to earlier. The second crab droid was similarly a pleasure to spray. And here are our two arthropod-like clankers next to each other. Neat, huh? So what are my conclusions about this paint set? In my opinion, the combination of ease of use and quality of finish of this Kaleido paints by Gaahleri is unmatched compared to any metallic paints that I've tried myself, and they also come pretty close to the best lacquers. Now, how that is even possible, I frankly have no idea. I can see that the size of the metallic flakes is very, very small, but even then, the acrylic medium must be really different or have some special additives. Gaahleri claims that these paints have lacquer-like characteristics, and as a lacquer fanatic myself, as you know, I must say that I have to reluctantly agree. They come pretty close. Now, what that means in terms of relative toxicity, I don't know. As we discussed in my previous video, the myth that water-based paints are non-toxic and therefore totally safe without, taking any precautions, is just that, a myth. Now, this is conjecture on my part, but I'm assuming that the price of making these acrylics so close to lacquers must be the inclusion of additives, potentially making them less safe to spray. If that is the case, at what point will it be better to simply use a lacquer and be done with it? I don't know, but in my last video, I already demonstrated to you that spraying acrylics without a respirator and an extractor booth, both things, is dangerous. And those are the same safety precautions that I take with lacquers. So maybe just use lacquers? I don't know, the decision is yours. However, I'll say this. If for some reason you must have water-based acrylics, you cannot go wrong with these paints, guys. To begin with, this set is currently on sale for €30.39. That means $2.53 per bottle, or 12 cents per millimeter, which is less than half the price of Vallejo Metal Color, and that is without counting the cleaner and the thinner, only the 12 paints. So in short, if you're in the market for acrylic metallics anyway, I would say give these paints a try. That's it for today's review, guys. I hope this gave you a solid look at how these paints perform across a full range, both on test spoons and on actual models. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments, whether you've tried these yourself or you have any other metallics that you swear by. And of course, a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters who make these videos possible, quite literally. Because if I had to rely on YouTube ad revenue, well, let's just say that I'd be painting droids with that ancient pot of Citadel chainmail from 1995. Yes, I do have one. Thanks for watching, guys, and remember, keep it up and weather it out.